Ryan, walk us through just to get it going from the mind of an investor. Like, just how does an investor process a pitch deck, specifically when it comes to go to market strategy? Do they have the goods? Founder market fit? Is there demonstration of traction? Do we have a semblance of some type of path towards product market fit? Walk us through the mindset so that everybody gets prepared on what we're going to be talking about.
Before we even get to the go-to-market piece, and of course, the entire deck needs to be supporting go-to-market in some way, shape, or form, right? The first three slides in the deck, right? I don't want to ignore this because with my investor hat on, if you haven't convinced me that I should care about this thing by first showing me there's a real problem, your solution adequately addresses it, and there's a big enough market to make it worth writing a check, go-to-market doesn't matter, all right? It might be a great go-to-market for what you're pitching, but if I don't believe that it's a big, scary pain that a lot of people care about, or enough people care about, and that you've got an adequate solution for it, it doesn't matter, right? So you got to make me care in those first three slides. Then I'm going to start digging in, and then it all needs to tie together, right? If you're telling me that you've got this amazing problem that you've discovered with a great solution, but then when we get to go to market, there isn't good connectivity between those two things, where you show me in your market size something completely outlandish, and then you don't adequately describe how we're going to get to that market in the first place, like, or there's just a complete disconnect between who you said is your market and who you say you're going to go reach, or who you say is your market and where we're going to go find them. Then we've got some challenges. So there's a whole lot going on there. So
let me expand, because you said something I think is worth double clicking on. You said the whole pitch deck has to be leading to how are we going to get this to market. But we know that founders, what they do is they do their pitch deck and they're like focused on, I'm going to communicate the problem and then the solution, and every slide is segmented in their minds, and there isn't that connectivity. Expand upon that more. How do all the slides, like competition slide and the team slide, relate to this problem of proving to the investor you're de-risking everything enough because there is potential for distribution?
Everybody put their investor hat on for a minute. If you're not an investor, just imagine if someone was asking you for money, what would be going through your head? We got to understand that we care about the idea at all, right? And I will continue to postulate that is problem, solution, and market size. This is what makes us care, right? If we relate to the problem and we believe that there's enough pain in the problem, there's enough people wanting to solve it, cool. Then we move on to the solution. If we feel like the solution adequately reverses that problem, we go, okay, yeah, that feels reasonable. That seems like a good thing. Okay, how big is this market? Okay, market size, great. It's a big enough market. You've now set the initial hook. Now I believe in the idea. What would you want to know next? Can this team actually execute this? And is there a market, and can we reach it? Right? Because if we can't reach the market, right? If there's not a clear go to market, kind of doesn't matter. Right. So this becomes the next most important thing to me. Right. If you're going to get my money, I want to understand, like, do I care about this at any level? Now, why would I feel confident that you can actually go and do this? And we see time and time again, people that will clear the hurdles of the technical stuff, right? They build the thing, right? They build the team, they build the product. Where do they typically struggle? It's within the go-to-market. They cannot get enough distribution. They cannot get enough eyeballs on it. They can't get the right eyeballs on it to actually generate enough revenue in a short enough amount of time that they can remain viable before the runway runs out. And so I get myopically focused on how everything points back or supports to how do we get to market? Because we don't ever get to market, guess what? Nothing happens. I don't know anybody who was like, well, we haven't gotten to market yet, but we're making all the money we want to. Our investors are super right. Like, it just never happens. Right? It kind of can't. Logically speaking, it just can't. So this is why I say that everything either needs to point to or support or at least not take away from our ability to get to market.
Fabulous explanation. There's a lot to unpack there. Let's use these pitch decks as examples. We've got this pitch deck here, Blue Wing. And Ryan, this is a Startups.com member. They just became a member, so we want to welcome them with open arms. So I'm going to ask you for your initial impression, and then I'm going to share sort of my thoughts in having gone through the pitch deck before with Will, how things have improved. And I think between the two pitch decks, we're going to be able to find some great recommendations. We've got Blue Wing, and it says decentralized air logistics, solving urgent delivery gaps for labs, federal agencies, and rural shippers underserved by legacy carriers.
Is this the problem slide, or is this just the intro slide? What are we looking at here?
Okay, Ryan, you really bring up a good point. This is the cover slide, but you kind of got a little confused. Walk us through that.
Yeah, because I don't know, right? Is this just the introduction? I mean, sometimes it's a little more apparent, but this is why we like to label these slides.
Right.
Right. Pretend I'm dumb, because I might be, right? So just cater to lowest common denominator here. Make it easy for everybody to understand what we're looking at. So this is just the intro slide. This is sort of like the strap line. And I imagine this is kind of dipping into the problem a little bit, although it's talking solution. but without getting into specifics. So okay, it's okay. I can sort of lean in, and I'm piecing stuff together in my mind. I'm going, okay, decentralized. So what are we stuffing stuff in people's carry-ons? What's going on here? Are we taking advantage of other underutilized capacity? Are we is this, oh yeah, it's air logistics. So yeah, so it's probably something like that. So
Right.
I'm okay here. I'm okay
Okay.
here.
I'll tell you one of the things Ryan has brought up. If your line here, which is kind of like the tagline explaining, is bigger than your logo and it's taking up all the attention, that's where we're going to be a little confused. I like the fact that we've got decentralized air logistics, but again, nobody understands what decentralized means specifically because you haven't provided any more context. And
Yep.
between the past deck, which had a little more information, such as AI for unmet, needs in rural areas, which we're getting between the two, I think it was better because if I just looked at this slide on its own, solving urgent delivery gaps for labs, federal agencies, that's a lot, and rural shippers, a lot going on there. Those are almost like three different businesses.
Yeah.
Underserved by legacy carriers. I don't know what we're delivering. Are we delivering like organs? Are we
Yeah.
delivering like secret nuclear codes? Like what's going on there?
All of
People?
the above,
Yeah,
I think.
always try and just be a lot more clear and concise. And here's a great test, everyone. Put just this slide in front of some strangers and say, read it. Do you know what my startup does? And they're like, no. Or if they can't clearly tell you what it is right from the get-go, then you've got some changes that you could use. How it works, we
Yeah.
explained last time. Don't put the how it works. As Ryan talked about, we'll mention this all the time. Problem, solution, market
Oh
size,
yeah.
first three slides, right? Ryan,
See,
as soon as
now
you
I'd be
see
even
this,
more
what happens?
confused.
Yeah,
Now I'd be even more confused because now I would assume that that first thing I saw was actually the problem and the solution slide merged together because we've gone straight from problem and solution to how it works. I don't need to know how it works yet. I'm not sure what we're doing.
right.
Okay, let me go through it though.
Wait. Let's go through the problem.
What happened to federal agencies? What happened to labs? We just killed those, and now we're just doing rural markets.
Well, it does say delayed lab results, but again, I'm still
So
confused.
go back to that first statement. Can we jump back there really quick? I just want to see. Maybe I misread that. Maybe there was a comma there that I didn't catch, or there's a and rural shippers. Combination of those things. Was it delivery gaps for labs and federal agencies through rural shippers? No, it says rural shippers underserved by legacy carriers. Okay.
I like the fact that rural markets, we have a target. I don't know how many or what is the size of that rural market. So you're not giving me a scope. I
Right.
like the fact that we're talking about underserved by UPS and FedEx. So why, with no access to guaranteed same day air freight across 250 to 500-mile routes? I don't need to know 250 to 500-mile routes. Saying that FedEx and UPS doesn't deliver to rural markets, it's close, but you're right in the sense that you started me off on the cover by explaining there's labs and federal agencies, and then you don't mention it. In fact, if it just said rural, same day rural shipping on the cover,
Yeah.
and for underserved markets, underserved rural markets, and you had this slide, it probably would have been easier to digest.
Yep. It's got to hang together because now we just got lots of questions because we also do see delayed lab results here. So it makes me think that okay, so are we really talking about are these federal laboratories serving lab results to rural markets, right? So are these things inextricably linked? Because on that very first slide, it made it sound like three different things. Are we really talking about just one thing here, which is how can we get lab specimens and lab results to and from rural areas to federal laboratories and back again, same day in underserved areas? Right? If that's what we're doing, cool. But let's be clear and say that because at this point it's kind of confusing. We don't talk about why same day access is important. Does that matter? We talk about SLA failures. A lot of people aren't going to know what an SLA is.
Exactly.
We have a
Yeah.
$22 billion a year loss, but we haven't really quantified the rest of the market in any way that would help us to understand what that's derivative of. There's some information here that I think is going to be more confusing than helpful. The good news is, I think, kind of to your point, we can clean this up quite a bit. I think we can clean this up by saying less here and by saying less in that very first slide, and actually have some clarity. But since we've got four of these to get through, should we keep cruising?
Absolutely. Let me just throw out there. I like what you said, Ryan. All the materials are there. If you just would have said there are, let's say, 500,000 businesses that need access to same day shipping that FedEx and UPS do not cover for
Yep.
various reasons, resulting in a $22 billion loss in terms of market opportunity for those companies, something like that, then it would have just been so much simpler instead of adding all the other stuff.
And is it air freight or is it air part? Like when I think freight, I think large. When I don't think lab results, right? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're sending, I don't know, maybe they are sending entire animal carcasses. I don't know. But if we're
All
doing something real specific here, let's be really specific about it, right? Because
yeah,
if it is what we're kind of hypothesizing, could we be saying there are 500,000 rural operations that need same day access to federal testing laboratories that can't get the results they need in the time they need it, right? That's the
perfect.
problem, right?
Okay,
We can get to something far more specific there. I think we can wordsmith it much, much better than that, but let's just be super specific here.
Ryan, you bring up a good point. I want to talk about this for a moment for everybody because, and you just kind of inspired this little section here. Don't worry, we'll get back to pitch decks. But Ryan, I want you to comment from a go-to-market perspective. Let me just say, from an investor perspective, what Ryan said, everyone, the more specific you are, the more we go, oh, that's a niche, underserved market, underrepresented, maybe underestimated, because these big companies aren't looking at that. They would have to spend billions of dollars. They don't have the innovation to go service that for a reason. It's a hard problem to solve. I'm more interested in that as an investor versus you want to take on FedEx or UPS. Like we have founders all the time say, I'm going to
Yes.
take on Facebook. And I say, great, have fun. I don't know of a single investor that would give you pre-seed money for that. So that's from an investor side. Ryan, how does being specific affect the go-to-market strategy?
Exactly as you said, right? So if you're just saying that these are these underserved markets, we want to understand more about the market so we can start to imagine why they're underserved. Even better, tell us why they're underserved, right? Because FedEx and UPS can't create cost efficient routes based on their scale. Doesn't work for them, which leaves this amazing sweet spot for us to step in and clean up this mid-market revenue of X billions of dollars that they just don't want to touch or can't touch for whatever reasons, right? This all of a sudden says, okay, so we're not having to sneak in and take a market. We're not having to create a market. We're going to go into something that's truly underserved. And there's a strong reason why it's currently underserved, but we have an elegant solution that just won't work for the big players.
Nice segue to the solution then, Ryan. Blue Wing unlocks a $2.1 billion market by connecting idle aircraft, certified pilots, urgent cargo like lab samples, and critical parts through AI powered dispatch, smart tiering, and insurance backed routing across US corridors.
So we've just now introduced a word that should have been in there from the very, very beginning.
Okay.
Urgent. This is the word that we were missing all the way back to that very first slide. Instead of saying all, maybe it was there. I don't think it was there. I didn't catch it if it was, but this actually matters a lot because now we understand why it matters, right? Why does this need to be solved? Why do we need air freight? Why do we need, right? So it's critical parts, right? So something's not happening because we don't have this. It's an AI lab result that allows us to move forward with who knows what it is. If we're talking federal agencies and lab results, could be food quality testing, could be any number of things that directly impact revenue and inventory. So this is really, really important. Okay, I feel like we might be getting a little bit too much into the how it works as opposed to just sort of the high level solution.
I think this is kind of like trying to be the Uber, or I think this is an interesting idea, idle aircraft. Obviously, there are a whole bunch of planes that aren't doing it. I think, what do you think about this? If it was just really simplified, I take out this $21 billion market, it hasn't been mentioned before, and just said Blue Wing connects entities, organizations that have to transport urgent cargo same day with idle aircraft using AI-powered logistics, because I don't know what smart tiering is. I don't, insurance back. Why is that important across U.S. corridors?
No, sounds like industry jargon.
But if we trimmed like 80% of this,
and what
I think
are corridors,
we'd be there.
right? Like lots of guessing here, right?
Yeah.
It gets stuff where it needs to go, right? That's what I need to know at this level. I need to understand the high level of how we're solving this. But I think you're right. I think we crossed out the right stuff. Whether or not AI powered dispatch matters, because does that make this unique? I don't know. I have to imagine that FedEx, UPS are probably also using AI powered dispatch at this point.
That's true.
I don't know.
That's true. Okay.
I don't think that's going to be the killer. The killer feature here is that we are grabbing idle aircraft, right? This is the Uber of air cargo. It's Airbnb, right? It's taking an underutilized asset and leveraging it, right?
Yep. As an investor, I'd be interested in that for sure.
Yeah.
Let's look at the market opportunities. So the TAM, 22 billion, 400 600 cargo focused, Part 135 operators. We
lost me.
Nobody knew
what does that mean.
Yeah, Part 135 operator. SAM, 250, 500-mile routes across 100 priority corridors. Don't know what that means either. 10 launch corridors. Don't know what that means either.
We need to simplify this. Make this relatable and understandable to somebody who doesn't live inside your industry, unless you are getting ready to talk to an investor who you are absolutely certain lives inside your industry.
Right. Therefore, it's just super hard to comment because we don't understand. Ryan, for the sake of time, let's go to the competitive landscape. Why blue
I
wing
also don't
now?
understand the that pie chart either, because it made it look like they were parts of they're parts of a whole, right? They're subsegments.
Right.
They're not additive.
Yes,
54 million is
exactly.
part of the 2.1 billion, part of the 22 billion. We don't really understand where this came from.
There's so much information out there on how to do TAM, SAM, SOM. They don't have a go-to-market strategy. I just realized it's either taken out. This is going to be a tough one. And so, Ryan, let's for the sake of this founder, just walk us through one more time. I think we are hammering on the same points, but just to make it real for this pitch deck, for a go-to-market strategy, what would an investor want to see from a deck like this?
Meaning from a go-to-market standpoint?
Yeah, if we had to
Well, I
just
would
kind of
like to have
suggest
seen
one.
clear definition of who the market actually is up until this point. We talked about corridors. We talked about routes. The one thing we haven't said, give me an example of one kind of client, right? One kind of customer, either on both sides. I mean, you're essentially creating a marketplace, right? If you're shipping, there's three people involved. There's the person doing the shipping, there's the people, like people who want to send, there's the sender, there's the actual transit company, and then there's the recipient. Who are these folks, right? We understand that they're in 100 different corridors and that there are 500 Part 135 operators. I don't know what any of that means. Give me an example, right? Farmer John needs to send urgent blood samples from a herd that may be infected with mad cow disease. I don't know if that's still a thing or not, right? Needs to get to the laboratory today, needs to get results back by so we can have certification, so we can understand whether this herd needs to be destroyed or whether they can be destroyed and then turn into hamburgers, right? So I don't know. I don't have enough of an understanding of what that looks like. So it makes it really hard for me to understand how we reach the market, right? And which side of the market is actually has the urgency. Is it the people receiving the results? Is it the lab getting the results, right? Does it have to get there because is it urgent because the sample degrades? We don't know any of this yet. I want to understand more about the nuance of the market.
Everyone, Ryan just demonstrated why all slides point towards a go-to-market strategy. And if you're missing information, and then on top of that, you're missing the go-to-market strategy, an investor is going to say, great, but you haven't given me any information to prove that you are the team that can go out and distribute this if I give you my money. And that's the battle that we're fighting right now. Let's take a look at the next deck and start to piece together. And everyone, remember, all these principles are going to combine together no matter what deck that you're looking at. But we just want to make sure that we're using these real examples here just so that you can learn and think about your own pitch decks as we're doing this. Creatus, game-driven project-based learning platform, build real-world projects, unlock in-game rewards.
Clearly,
PlayStation.
it's Creatus.
Is it?
Ed, come on. Yeah, you put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Okay, so it's project-based learning. My eyes jumped to the line below. I skipped the stuff at the top for some reason.
Yes.
So I saw build real-world projects, unlock in-game rewards. So I thought it was a gamified project management, and it probably sort of is, but it's game-driven, project-based learning platform. So we got project management, gamification, learning platform. Okay,
I can say, Ryan, the other cover was better because it just said, I think it literally said e-learning platform for students without holding their hands or spoon feeding them. But you could have combined the two. It helps if you explain who the solution is for. So if you said
100%.
Game-driven, project-based e-learning for STEM students around the world, that would have been enough.
Stick on that for a second, Ed, because what is one of the things that tells us? Who the market we're going to is, right? So back to my point around, we want to understand where this market is and how we're going to get there, right? If we know that it's students, then we understand something about it, right? If we can narrow that down even further, right? If it's STEM students or engineering students or K through 12 students or just high school or just university, it tells us a lot more about the market we're going to have to go after and whether the rest of this stuff makes sense or not.
And everyone thinks that, oh, let's add a tagline slogan, but you all just saw Ryan get confused by build real world projects, unlock in-game rewards. You'd rather all be clear and concise than clever. Don't cause friction in the minds of whomever's looking at your pitch deck. Limited assessment tools and single-use design restrict non-coding offerings of game-based STEM mobile learning platforms, leaving 360 million online teens with low engagement options and 27 billion in annual unmet demand.
Okay, we could be a little less jargony here, I think. How about something like, I don't understand so when we say limited assessment tools, are those built into platform? What do we mean? I actually don't know what single use design means. Is that one off? I really don't understand what it means in the context. I know what single use means, but I don't understand it in this non-coding offerings. Ed, am I missing something here? I don't understand anything before that comma really, other than STEM mobile learning platforms.
The previous deck actually explained it a little better, but I want to highlight something. Let's do this exercise. Anytime you look at the problem statement, we're looking at what are the causes of the problems or the specific facets of the problem that we're going to solve. So on this slide, we mentioned limited assessment tools and single-use design. Everyone, just keep that in your mind. We know that the size, who is the market, and the size is 360 million online teens. We're not explaining why there's low engagement options
Yeah.
unless this is explained. I don't understand. And then they're saying the cost is 27 billion unmet demand. Just remember this, everyone, because let's go to the solution. Do we solve those problems in the solution slide? And do we understand it? First and foremost, Creatus is a mobile game app ecosystem that offers teens a diverse range of STEM courses beyond coding that are 10x cheaper and 8x more engaging than alternatives through reusable gameplay, real world project building challenges, and peer assessment. First of all, do you understand what's going on, Ryan?
Yes and no. Right. I'm kind of piecing it together, but again, that's problematic. When we don't just see a problem that is immediately reversed by the solution, if I have to think about, do I understand the problem, which I still don't really exactly. I mean, I understand some of what they're saying, but I don't really understand how that adds up to a problem, not a clear problem. And then when we get here, it becomes apparent that it seems like what we're trying to address is the engagement piece. We didn't say anything about being too expensive at
Exactly.
the right? But we say 10x cheaper than what? And this reusable gameplay. And again, I don't know what single use and reusable means in this case. Right? It doesn't add anything to it, and it makes me wonder what we're talking about here. So I do understand what real world project building challenges are, but it would be helpful to narrow this down. And it's talking about the fact that we've got STEM courses beyond coding. So what are those real world projects? I don't know. So this is it. Problem and solution are not nearly clear enough. And at this point, I don't have enough information to help really boil this down and say, like, here's what I would do differently. We'd need some founder input on this.
Let me point out what Ryan said again. Very clear. I'm just going to put it right between the eyes for everyone. In the solution, we're highlighting 10x cheaper and 8x more engaging. And in the problem, it doesn't say everything's too expensive, and that's why the problem exists.
Yeah.
Single-use design, maybe multi-reusable gameplay, limited assessment tools, peer assessment. If you would have
went away. Oh no, I guess there's peer assessments.
right, if you just would have said these courses are disengaging because nobody gets to assess or know where they stand, and the solution is we're using peer assessment to solve that. Well, then now you've got that, but because of the lack of clarity, most likely the founder knows what that is in their mind, but
I'm
we
sure
have no
they
clue.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would argue like you got to be really careful because when you say something like peer assessment, talk about exactly how that works because assessment tends to come at the end of an exercise. If I wasn't engaged, I didn't complete the exercise, right? Or there's not going to be something proper to assess because I mailed it in, right? So does this to me the solution into scrutiny because I don't understand how that would actually play out, all right? Sounds like engagement would come from the gamification. So I still don't understand where the assessment piece comes in there.
Ryan, many founders throw in all sorts of problems and all sorts of solutions. They throw the kitchen sink on there. And I know it's frustrating to deal with me sometimes. I basically force them. You have to choose one problem. I know eventually you're going to solve them all. You have to pick one and focus. From an investor side, the reason is investors want to know that you can dominate one thing because if you got multiple things, it's difficult to build everything for that to get market traction. I don't want my money diluted across all these things. So I'm going to ask you to prioritize. If you could solve one thing and entrench yourself, what would that be? From a go-to-market strategy, how does all this affect the way that we do this distribution thing? We solve that problem.
Well, because it helps us to understand who we would go to and how we would couch that solution. Like what problem are we solving? Are we aiming at the right part of the market? Do they seem to be the ones that actually suffer from that highly specific problem? This comes down to like ICP alignments, early adopter selection, all of this stuff. Because if we're solving 10 or 15 problems, or even 3 or 4, are all of those coexistent within that same market? Does that help us narrow the market? Or is it like, well, some of the problem exists within this population. This part of the problem is really felt more by these folks. So are we just dividing and adding stakeholder groups, which sometimes founders feel like augments things because like we have that many more people to go after. Yeah, but they're a separate exercise. I don't go hunting for rabbits, quail, and elephant with the same gun. Like hopefully nobody goes hunting for elephants anymore, but you get the point.
Yes. Ryan, let me ask you this. How important is it to niche down? Let me give you an example. You were a soccer player, or you are a soccer player. So you get any soccer in over in Spain? Is that happening
Not
yet?
I am now 5 weeks since my last game, and I can feel it. I can feel it.
Okay. Imagine a startup says, we want to hit all athletes with this cool device. But then, they say one of our focuses is soccer players because we got the data, things like that. Okay. But then how much would it be casual soccer players or soccer players getting into the game over 40 years old or male soccer players that have right toe issues. How important is it to drill down and niche down from a go-to-market perspective?
When we actually go to market, like when we begin our advertising, we begin our outreach, when we begin whatever that promotional distribution is, it's super important, right? It'd be like if Nike was out there, be like, shoes for sports, right? Worse, shoes for people, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't work. You want to know, you want to see yourself reflected in that stuff. You want to see, as the user, you want to see that they're speaking specifically to you, that they solve an issue that you have, not a general vanilla issue, but one that you're likely to specifically suffer from and want a solution to. At the go-to-market level, obviously, we're going to sit a bit above like the level of sophistication and sort of specificity we would have for individual advertising. But at some point, we also do want to understand that when we get to the go-to-market slide, I am going to want to see that because I want to know specifically where you're going to market, right? I don't want you to tell me about your TAM again. I don't need that. I need to know, okay, great. Your TAM is this, right? Our TAM is eventually all athletes. Awesome. All right. It's probably not, but let's just pretend that's true. But your go-to-market can't start with marketing to athletes. You're going to have to pick a niche. And I want to understand why that particular niche is the low friction, high probability spot that you're going to start.
That was perfect, Ryan. I set that up. You knocked it out of the park. Let's look at the market.
It's like we've done this before, Ed.
Exactly. All right. So the TAM, 28 billion. It says in type that we can barely see 390 million times 72 per year. 1.3 billion at adolescents, 10, 19-year-olds, 60% are all interested in STEM. 50% can pay $6 a month. Equates to 390 million. Okay, at least the numbers line up. SAM targeting 29% of adolescents who choose STEM, and then 93.6 million target to serve 1.3 million learners in 3 years. Quick comment, everyone, listen. If your SOM is not over 100 million, you are not in the territory for unicorn-minded investors. Just FYI, why? Because that was the classic calculation for unicorn valuation. Not for every investor. Some investors get intimidated by that number if they're friends, family, associates. But if you don't doing 100 million, you don't get your 10x multiplier and you're not unicorn status. So just an awareness, depending on which investor you talk to. But Ryan, what do you think generally about this market in terms of the way they've segmented it down, specifically for go-to-market?
Yeah, I think that it's a lot of numbers, and what we end up with is a target to serve, right? But it actually doesn't say why. How did we get from 9.5 billion to 93.6 million?
That's true.
Doesn't tell me how we went from SAM to SOM.
Right.
What is the difference? Right. These should be qualified in some way, right? Not just sizes, arbitrary number sizes, right? So we go from 1.3 billion adolescents, 10 to 19 years old, of which I guess 60% are interested in STEM, and 50% of those can pay $6 a month. I'd have so many questions about this because clearly these are global or global-ish numbers.
Global,
right? Has to be. Can pay $6 a month. Now, is that an average amount? Because if they can spend 29 cents in rural India, how do we actually price this thing, and which part of that market are we going after first? Right? How does this, because these kind of big round numbers leave a lot to be desired when it gets to go to market, right? Are we going to have different price points, or are we assuming that everyone everywhere will just pay $6 a month? And is that even the right strategy? I would argue it's not how I would look at it. Kids who play games and who choose STEM careers. And so that's defining our SAM. But then again, we're just saying arbitrarily, we're gonna try to serve 1.3 million learners in 3 years, and that's our SOM.
Everyone, founders saying, "Oh, if we just hit 1% of the market, we're gonna all be, rich."
Yeah.
That doesn't work. You're not explaining how or why, as Ryan's talking about. But I do want to say kudos. Okay, everyone here, this actually is, even though it is convoluted, this is an example of a bottom-up analysis, which is what you want to do. Instead of saying, the e-learning industry is $1 trillion around the year, and if we make 1% of that, we're going to make so much money. There's actually logic, even though it's too much going on, and you can simplify it. But there is logic for a bottom-up analysis, and I think all founders need to learn the difference between top-down, bottom-up, and value theory analysis, and I encourage you all to go look that up. Ryan, let's take a look at the go-to-market. Let's look for a go-to-market. Okay, virtual hackathons and user-generated content, real prizes, gameplay clips. I like it. I'm excited. Okay. Hackathons will feature tech-agnostic rapid prototyping challenges. No laptops, special tools needed, just a phone. Outreach, registration, 10%. I don't know what these paid subscription. Maybe
it's
that's
outreach to registration. So meaning if they reach out to 100 people, they're expecting 10% of those to register. Registrations to project actual submissions would be 20% of that, and hackathon to paid subscription. I get it. I understand what they're doing there. But how many people are reaching out to? Where are they? Who are they? Are these virtual hackathons that they are putting on, or are they participating in? Are they leveraging existing events from schools? It says for schools in our network. What's your network, right? We have, maybe that was addressed in another slide somewhere else in some resources thing that I didn't see. I like it. This is pretty specific, right? But I'd like to understand a little bit more about, like, how many hackathons are we talking about doing? How much outreach do we think we'll need to do to fill a hackathon, right? If we've got outreach to registration is 10%, how many people do we need for a single hackathon? How are we planning on reaching this population, some of which are heavily guarded by privacy and age rights, right? So there's things that might make this more difficult. So if we're working through the schools for distribution, that's great to know. Do we have relationships with those? One of the things I always love to see in go-to-market, I love to see this in general. I talk about this a lot. Give me unit level economics. Give me unit level achievement. Give me unit level traction, right? For example, we have this school in, right? Break it down for me so I can see how you're going to do one, then talk about, we've got 200 more of these we can do, right?
Perfect.
We're going to start with this school in St. Louis, Missouri. They've got this many students that are already interested in STEM. We are going to do outreach to all of them. We're hoping for that 10% conversion to joining the hackathon with a 20% submission, right? That'll give us these numbers for that specific hackathon. We have 200 more like this in pocket, and 15,000 more in our initial market that we believe are reachable, but we don't have relationships with yet. That makes me go, okay, they know exactly how they're going to approach this.
Right. You always say, Ryan, give us the what, tell us the why, and explain the how. And if you can cover those. Here's what I like, Ryan, is what you said, specificity. It isn't just, we're going to do social media. Right. If you would have explained, we're going to use virtual hackathons, that is unique. Tell me why. And then, being a creator myself, I like saying, we're going to record the content in the hackathons and then distribute it out on the internet. Explain how we've set channels, YouTube, we have this many subscribers, or we think we're going to reach out to these people. So there's a lot to like in terms of the what being specific. You haven't explained the why. I'd love to hear exactly why virtual hackathons are superior to just ads or going to different schools, different channels. But there is a lot to like here, and they are attempting to go and at least project, we can do this amount of registration. That'd be nice if it was a battle test number and they're actually showing it. So, pretty good.
But it's not bad. It's not bad. I like some of the specificity, but again, like there's some missing stuff, right? And I think you nailed some of it. I'd love to see the word because here somewhere, right? Because schools are already running 15,000 hackathons per year and students are already registering in these quantities, right? Like, give us some third-party data if you don't have anything first party, but help us understand, like, how do we get to that, right? Are those what you hope happens, that 10%, or is that based on what we normally see from a participation across all hackathons nationwide or worldwide? There are 500 students in every municipality STEM programs. And on average, 50 of them will register for a hackathon. Okay, cool. Now I get where you're coming from with these numbers, right? Give us a little bit of meat here to help us understand that this isn't just how we desire to go to market, but that there is some likelihood of this, or that traction is Trump for me, right? Like, I want to know if you've already done some of this, you've seen some of this, or you've even just seen evidence of someone else doing this. This is what we want.
Ryan, founders get overwhelmed by everything. I talked to a founder the other day and worked so hard on the problem, getting out to market. The solution has got an MVP. It's out there. I said, well, what are your financial projections? Do you have that ready for investors? And what about this? And what about that? And they just get so overwhelmed and say, how does one founder think about all these aspects? It's like just having to go through every single detail just to do the go-to-market strategy. Ryan, there were times when you need an entire team of experts just to help you with specifics on each one of these things that investors are going to look for. What do you say to the founder that's feeling overwhelmed in terms of, how do I actually get out and fulfill all these things in the go-to-market strategy? Think it through, be thoughtful, get down to exactly what you are asking for. What do you say?
Look, I think it comes back to consider your ask, right? And what are you asking the investor to believe in? What are you asking them to believe that you can go and accomplish with their money? If you think that building a pitch deck and building the evidence around a pitch deck is a big ask, think about what you're asking from the investor side, right? If you're going after $1 million, you got to earn it. You got to earn that ask, right? And I think that where this becomes problematic for a lot of founders is they make it more complicated than it actually is.
Okay.
By trying to tell a higher level story instead of the low level story. When we get into things like, right, so problem solution market size have to stay kind of high level, right? Again, that's where you're trying to hook me into the overall story, right? That's the description on the jacket of the book, right? The rest of the book, the rest of the story has to make me believe it, right? And that's where, when we get into things like go to market, bring it down close to ground. This is what we've already done. I've already called 15 schools. We've got 7 of them saying they'd love to have us set up hackathons for them. How long does it take to call 15 schools? Not very long. How long does it take to convince an investor you've never called a school before, but that they'll probably say yes at a whatever rate, and it will get this number of students and that? Maybe never is the answer to that. Right. So I think when you think about something Will and I talked about in a podcast a long time ago, was don't just think about the size of the opportunity, think about the probability. And so when you start to think about like, okay, I can put this big number out there, and it's a nice big number, or it's a round figure, it's a high level thing that I think investors will like to see, maybe, but will they believe it? What's the probability that they buy into this? Versus if I just act small, think small, do something highly specific
that could
then
scale.
they can do the extrapolation math on, right? Because if you can show me how you do it once,
exactly,
I can multiply it by 1,000. I can multiply it by 10,000. This is
Beautiful.
why I'm always getting down like unit economics with founders too, because I don't need to see your 5-year projection where you multiply everything by 100 million.
Right.
Show me how it happens once, and then we'll talk about what the mechanics of repeating that look like. That's believable.
Let's jump on this. Ryan, you're telling me and all of us that I don't need to give you a go-to-market strategy that's going to take me to unicorn status and $100 million. Now, if I'm asking, let's say, for $2 million, I better have $2 million at least times the multiplier, 10x, so $20 million of de-risking enough for that investor. But you're saying if I go to the investor, and let's say I just want to check for $100,000, and I came to you and said, I believe the market is big enough to be $100 million, but I started off here in my community. I called 15 people. I sold 10 units. Here's my retention. Here's how much it costs. That's good enough to go and raise $100,000?
Can be, right? Again, it depends on how well it supports the story of what you're going to do next, right? So the go-to-market needs to talk about how we get that initial traction, where are we going within this bigger market? How are we going to address it? Then, because this is how we're going to get there, we're going to do this because we're going to do hackathons because schools are already running these things, but they're getting subpar results because they don't have these systems in place. Cool. We're going to get this number of students on board because this is what's already happening. These are observable behaviors, or we've gone and done this stuff. Once we hit this number, then we can expand our efforts because now we'll have this much cash, this much understanding, this much more reach. And now we can start to do these other things. So we can show the kind of the sequential growth. It's not that we have to stop at one customer. I'm not saying like, show me how you do it once, and then I'll just believe everything you say after that. Build on that, right? Show me the evidence of 1. I'm more likely to believe the speculation of 10 and the long shot of 100 and the near impossibility of the unicorn 1,000, right? I often think about how I would convince my parents to let me do something when I was a kid, right? It's like, we want to go do this thing. If I just tell you the thing we want to go, like, I want to go on a camp out with my friends.
Sure.
Right? No, right? I want to go on a camp out with my friends, and it'll be okay because I'm going to go to this place and we're going to do like, so you start to provide the evidence of why this is safe. How am I going to de-risk this so that I get the yes?
Got
it.
Right?
So think of it that way, right? Think about you're talking to your parents, like, how would you de-risk a decision for anybody, right? And it's by providing enough proof, or whatever proof that you can, that it isn't just pie in the sky, it isn't just hopes and dreams, but that there is some real, again, traction behind what we're trying to accomplish.
If I said to my parents, let's say I was 14 years old, and I said, I'm going backpacking in Europe for 2 months, that's a whole other set of de-risking that I need to do. But like I said, if I just go to my buddy's backyard, they're the next door neighbor for one night, can be required.
We're gonna go backpack around our hometown. Or you start to provide evidence of why the 2 months worth it, right? The long-term goal is 2 months worth of backpacking. Here's what I'm going to show you first. I'm going to show you first how I'm going to get there, right? I'm going to go out and I'm going to work my paper route until I can afford my ticket to get there, and the Eurorail. So I'll have safe transportation, right? It's all the little evidence that build up to the big thing, right? So we have to work backwards from there, right? This is, again, another one of those bottom-up kind of things. It's fine to tell me what that SOM looks like, but you have to explain to me how you're going to get to the first person in the SOM before I believe you're going to get to all whatever 1% of that kind of arbitrary number that we land on.
That's great. Ryan, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for helping us. Everybody out there, if you're watching this on the interwebs, do the YouTube thing. Like, comment, subscribe, share it with a friend. Just share the information. We don't even need you to share Startups.com. Just say, here's what I learned about go-to-market strategies. And as always, if you have a pitch deck that you want reviewed, just leave a comment or contact us if you're part of Startups.com community. As you see, you get priority in terms of your reviews. We're here to help you out. Ryan, fabulous as always. Thank you. See you next week.